Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Life Story 999, where we share heartfelt stories that inspire us all. Today, we bring you a powerful tale of perseverance, respect, and unexpected kindness that might change the way we look at the world. Make sure to watch until the end, and if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends. Also, we'd love to hear your own experiences. Please feel free to share them in the comments or send us an email. Imagine standing under the blazing sun, determined to honor those who gave everything for their country. Today, we follow the journey of an injured Marine named William "Bill" Henderson, who stood alone in tribute until something truly amazing happened. Grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's dive into this touching story. What would you do in this situation? Would you be able to show such dedication and resilience? Share your thoughts with us. It was Memorial Day weekend, and the streets of Washington, D.C. were bustling with tourists, veterans, and their families. Among the crowd stood a lone Marine, Bill Henderson. Bill, a 68-year-old retired Marine sergeant, had medals proudly adorning his uniform, each one representing a sacrifice, a victory, or a moment that defined his long career in the service. He stood still in the middle of the busy street, his hand raised in salute, as if nothing around him could break his concentration. His gaze was focused, his posture steady, paying respects to his fallen comrades. Years ago, Bill had been wounded in combat, an injury that left him with a pronounced limp. The pain was a constant companion, a reminder of his past battles, but it had never deterred his spirit. On this day, despite the unrelenting heat of the midday sun, he chose to stand for hours, his hand firmly raised, a tribute to those who had given their lives for the country he loved so dearly. The sun beat down mercilessly, yet Bill remained undeterred. His salute did not falter, his determination did not fade. Passers-by began to notice the elderly Marine. They whispered among themselves, captivated by his resilience. Many stopped to watch, some taking photographs, others approaching with bottles of water. Bill always declined with a polite smile, determined to keep his tribute pure and undistracted. This was his moment to honor those who were no longer here, especially his brother, who had died in combat, sacrificing himself to save Bill. It was that memory that kept Bill's arm raised, even when his muscles screamed in protest. Bill's thoughts wandered to those days filled with danger, bravery, and loss. He remembered his brother's laughter, his bravery, and the ultimate sacrifice he made. It was those memories that gave Bill the strength to keep standing. His brother's sacrifice was not something Bill would ever forget, and today, he was here to honor him and every other soldier who had made the ultimate sacrifice. As the minutes turned into hours, the crowd grew, their respect for the lone Marine palpable. Bill stood, unwavering, a testament to loyalty, honor, and the power of remembrance. 2 hours had passed, and Bill's arm was aching, his injured leg throbbing with pain. Sweat poured down his face, but his posture remained strong. He was exhausted, his body begging for relief, but he refused to let go. Just as his strength seemed on the verge of failing, a low rumble began to rise above the murmur of the crowd. The sound grew louder, and soon, a group of bikers appeared over the hill, dozens of them, their engines roaring in unison. The crowd instinctively parted as the bikers approached, their black leather jackets and tough appearances sending ripples of unease through the onlookers. Many whispered in concern, worried that these rough-looking individuals might disrupt the solemn tribute. But what happened next stunned everyone. The bikers parked their motorcycles in a neat line and dismounted with a quiet grace that belied their intimidating presence. Their faces were serious as they approached Bill. Without saying a word, they formed a circle around him. Then, in perfect unison, they raised their hands in salute, joining Bill in his tribute. The sight of these tough, leather-clad bikers standing silently at attention was nothing short of astonishing. Their unexpected gesture turned a solitary act into an unforgettable show of unity, transcending the stereotypes often associated with their kind. One of the bikers, a heavily tattooed man named Jack, stepped forward with a bottle of water in his hand. His face, though weathered, held a gentle expression as he approached Bill. "Take a sip, brother," Jack said softly. "It's hot out here." He unscrewed the cap and held the bottle up to Bill's lips, allowing him to drink without having to lower his salute. The cold water provided Bill with a much-needed moment of relief, and he nodded in gratitude, his eyes meeting Jack's in a silent exchange of respect. The crowd watched in awe, their initial fears replaced by admiration. The biker's unexpected act of kindness shifted the atmosphere. What began as a lone tribute was now shared by many, a powerful moment of solidarity that brought strangers together. The bikers' silent salutes stood as a testament to the deep respect they held for the Marine and for all those who had served. In that moment, the barriers of appearance and assumption crumbled, leaving only the purity of a shared tribute to the fallen. The bikers continued to stand with Bill, their salutes perfectly matching his. The scorching sun was unrelenting, its heat radiating down with a punishing force. Yet, despite the discomfort, no one moved. They all stood together, their unity and respect for the fallen unwavering. After a while, one of the bikers, a woman named Maria, stepped forward. She carried a small portable fan, her eyes filled with empathy for the elderly Marine. Without hesitation, she began to gently fan Bill, offering him a much-needed respite from the oppressive heat. Her actions were tender, her face full of admiration for the Marine who stood before her, determined and resolute. The crowd, which had initially been wary of the bikers, began to soften. People who had looked on with suspicion now saw beyond the leather jackets and the rough exterior. They began to see the kindness, respect, and solidarity that these bikers embodied. The bikers, often judged by their intimidating appearances, were revealing a side of themselves that few had taken the time to witness, a side defined by compassion, honor, and a deep respect for those who serve their country. Hello and welcome to Life Story 999. Today, we bring you a story of resilience, courage, and justice. What would you do if you were wrongly judged because of someone's bias? Let us know in the comments below or email us your own stories. We love hearing from you and might even share your story in a future video. It was a bright morning in Savannah, Georgia. Mildred Parker, a well-respected federal prosecutor, was starting her day with what she thought would be a simple task: addressing a parking ticket in municipal court. Mildred was used to tackling complex federal cases, but today she found herself in a less formal setting, a local courtroom with a minor personal matter to handle. Mildred wasn't dressed in her usual courtroom attire. Instead, she opted for a casual navy blue blazer over a white blouse and black slacks, her natural hair pinned back neatly. Her appearance was unassuming, and perhaps that was why the judge, Henry Barnes, overlooked who she truly was. Judge Barnes, an older man who had presided over local cases for decades, was known for his sharp tongue. He took pride in his courtroom's punctuality and demanded respect from everyone. At exactly 9 a.m., he entered the room, nodding at the attendees, most of whom were there for small infractions. He glanced around approvingly at those who had arrived early. Most were dressed in business attire, their paperwork neatly organized. Mildred, delayed by an urgent work call from her boss regarding a major federal case, walked into the courtroom at 9:10 a.m. She had spent the last half hour parked outside a coffee shop, reviewing sensitive documents related to a high-profile human trafficking case. As she stepped into the courtroom, she could feel the weight of Judge Barnes' disapproving gaze. "Miss Parker, you were scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp," Judge Barnes announced, his voice dripping with irritation. "Do you think your time is more valuable than the court's time?" The room went quiet, and all eyes turned to Mildred. Without even giving her a chance to explain, the judge raised his gavel and fined her $500 for tardiness. He spoke to her as if she were a student being scolded for skipping class, not a professional who had dedicated her career to serving justice. But today, Judge Barnes would learn that appearances can be deceiving. Mildred stood at the podium, her expression calm, though her heart pounded in her chest. She had faced intimidation before, but this was different. It was personal. She took a deep breath, readying herself to speak, knowing that this moment demanded not just composure, but courage. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady, "I understand the importance of punctuality in this courtroom. However, I was delayed due to an urgent federal matter involving a high-profile case. I'm here today to address a parking ticket, but I assure you, I am committed to justice just as much as anyone in this room." Her tone was respectful, but firm. Judge Barnes hesitated, clearly caught off guard by her composed response. He looked at her more closely, as if realizing there was more to her than he had assumed. Mildred continued, "I believe we are all here to serve justice, Your Honor, and that includes treating each individual with the fairness and respect they deserve." The judge's stern expression softened for a moment, and the room seemed to shift. Mildred's quiet strength was palpable, and those present could feel the power of her words. Judge Barnes cleared his throat, his posture stiffening once again. "Very well, Miss Parker. Let's proceed," he said, though his voice lacked the earlier harshness. Mildred nodded, stepping back from the podium. She knew that this small encounter was just the beginning, and she was prepared to see it through, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been unfairly judged. Mildred stood at the podium, her posture straight and calm. She had faced countless challenges in her career, from prosecuting organized crime to tackling corruption, but this was different. This was an abuse of power happening in real time, right in front of her. Judge Barnes hadn't even looked at her credentials before passing judgment. "Your Honor, if I may," Mildred began, her voice steady, "I'd like to introduce myself properly for the record." She reached into her bag and held up her badge. "My name is Mildred Parker. I am an assistant United States attorney, currently serving the Northern District of Georgia." The golden badge glinted in the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, and the entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Judge Barnes' face, which had been red with authority just moments before, suddenly went pale. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, realizing that he had made a grave mistake. The courtroom was silent, and the expressions of those seated ranged from surprise to satisfaction. The clerk, Mrs. Thompson, who had been typing away at her desk, paused and looked up, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Mildred continued, her voice unwavering. "I apologize for my tardiness, Your Honor. I was delayed due to urgent federal business concerning a high-profile human trafficking prosecution. I believe, as officers of the court, we should all prioritize justice, both here and at the federal level." Judge Barnes swallowed hard, and the once authoritative demeanor seemed to shrink. He fumbled with the papers in front of him, clearly unsure of how to proceed. "Well, Miss Parker, had I known your position," he began, but Mildred cut him off. "Your Honor, my position should not matter," she said firmly. "What should matter is fairness and equal treatment under the law." She looked around the courtroom, meeting the eyes of those watching. Many nodded subtly, clearly moved by her words. "I have also taken note of how others in this courtroom have been treated today," she added, "and I intend to ensure that our justice system lives up to its promise of equality." Judge Barnes shifted in his chair, visibly uncomfortable. He knew he had overstepped, and now his actions were being called out publicly by someone with the power to hold him accountable.